Good afternoon and welcome to Ask George after the first day of the second test at Multan. Afternoon, George. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Worst wear after the cricketers' Christmas party?
I haven't even got changed.
Interesting day, mad day, really, wasn't it? In a different kind of way. Let's start with this question that you, I think, can answer in your piece. I mean, if England had batted in a more traditional and conservative manner, would they still been bowled out today, but for fewer runs?
I think it's a terrific question. I think it's basically the question we're all asking ourselves. And I don't know the answer. I'm sorry to say, I don't know the answer. But I'm inclined to think we've seen quite a lot of innings where in the past where England have poked around for a long time and they maybe haven't made that many. There was lots to like, I thought, about the way they batted. I don't have any problem with the reverse sweep. I think it's a very sensible mechanism of countering the turning ball. It might be a better defensive option than the forward defensive. It really might against the turning ball. So I think we've got to challenge conventional views in that sense. A couple of the dismissals don't look great. But equally, who's to say that, Harry Brook caught it mid-off. Okay, it doesn't look great. But then Joe Root and Ben Stokes, who are probably England's best batters, were dismissed playing defensive shots, weren't they? By really good balls as well, I thought.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Actually, I'd be interested to hear your views. What did you think?
No, I'm very much on Ben Duckett's side actually. After you didn't answer the specific question, but he talked about his game plan being to sweep, and ultimately he made 60 odd, and he reckons he swept 90% of the balls he faced the spinners. Isn't it? You're going to miss one, and if you miss one, you're out of BW, you're out of BW. But ultimately, reverse sweep was probably 80 odd for four. By the end, 80 odd for three rather. Pope, Leach, and Anderson, but you'll take the 80 odd on the turning pitch. And as you say, we've sat and watched Axar Patel, bowl arm balls through sort of forward prods last year, didn't we? We watched only 9 months ago England bat for 60 odd overs against Kyle Mayers for 120, and that was, none of the spin or demons in that pitch that not that there have been demons in this pitch, but there's been spin, and they've got 280. I think in the past, I think they've batted for 51 overs on a turning pitch against a guy with a bit of mystery rather than being a mystery spinner. I think there is a difference there. They'd have got nowhere near 280. They'd have got 160, 170, and then you'd be saying, yeah, they're out of the game, because it only takes two partnerships, and they're Pakistan are 50, 60 ahead of you, and the last thing you want to be on that pitch really is batting third on day three with deficit. So, in a funny kind of way, it might, England doing what they now do probably means they'll have that third innings earlier. Probably means we start losing. It might have been if they were doing it midway through day four with a large deficit. Obviously, that might still happen if Pakistan bat out their skins. But I'm with the new wisdom rather than the conventional wisdom on this, which is that 280 all out in 51 overs on a pitch that historically England would have, in a set of circumstances that historically England wouldn't have liked. I thought it was just a really good day's cricket, to be honest. For all those reasons, yeah. Is that about right?
I think it is. I think I agree with just about all that. All I would say is that these approaches, they don't have to be black and white. So there are moments when, great sweep, but don't necessarily sweep every ball. But it's difficult if we're going to praise Harry Brook.
That is the other big thing. You can't sit back, watch last week, and call it the best England win of all time and say how good they were, and then not acknowledge that there are going to be days when it goes wrong.
They're in danger. Yeah.
We sat there and laughed as Harry Brook broke his own record twice in the game for the most runs by an Englishman in over, and then you get caught mid off. You've got to take the rough and smooth. It'll take a bit of time.
Well, you do a bit, but you also can't be laissez-faire about it, because you have to act in a different circumstances.
It felt a bit like the Morgan New Zealand's fifth ODI, wasn't it? Is it 302 in 47 overs? Or something? The one they didn't bat out the 50, and it takes that people understand it more because it's worked in the series. But that back then was, I think it was Nasser was doing the post-match presentation saying, what about those 50 overs, and obviously different formats, but sort of the same challenging of conventional wisdom, wasn't it? That having seen them chase 350 in that series, then to be bowled out early, then people are asking those questions. Whereas, England break all these records a week ago, and they bowled out just before tea today, but still with a score on the board that they, in a previous year, he might have settled for quite happily.
Absolutely. So it's a better question than we've provided an answer. But that in itself, it shows that, you can talk about these things a lot.
Yeah.
They're still in the game. The game is very much open. I do think maybe they've left a few runs out there. And actually, if they batted longer, you can interpret it the way you have. But equally, you could say maybe batting would have been a bit more difficult for Pakistan. The other thing I'd say is England didn't bowl very well. But that's, they bowled okay. But we might come on to that in other questions.
Well, on the bowling, Sahil Mittal asks, surely Rehan Ahmed should have played on this. And I guess that is sort of ties into a lot of the questions that have been asked to him about the pitch, how England have read it, and how do you see that? I guess the only change was Wood for Livingston.
Well, I think that England have two seamers who haven't bowled yet, haven't they? In Stokes and Robinson, and I think Joe Root has bowled as many overs as the four seamers that England have combined, which would suggest that the balance of the team isn't right. But reverse, second innings, all sorts of things could yet come into play. The question asked, surely Rehan Ahmed should have played. Maybe the question would be better if it was, surely another spinner should have played. I think Rehan Ahmed, is obviously way above what you would expect someone to be with teenage leggy. You wonder as well, why did they carry Matt Parkinson around with them for 2 years and then give up on him? I presume, and to be fair, I need to check that they've given up on him because, and they haven't given up on him, that he is currently working on his action, trying to add 5 miles an hour or whatever it is, a couple of miles an hour. And he's going, there's some remedial work going on. He may have lost some of his good qualities as he tries to do that. I don't know that. That's just a theory. I suspect the Rehan's there because they want him to gain experience. They want to familiarise him with the squad and vice versa. And we would have to be very, very understanding if he were given a debut in the next week or so, because he's not the finished product. Of course he isn't. But could he, should he have played in this game, bearing in mind everything we've seen now? Well, if he's good enough to be called into the squad, if they hadn't called anyone else up to replace Livingston, then I think probably he should. Yeah, probably.
I guess that last thing you say as well is important. It's the now, isn't it? Ultimately, I think England didn't go in with this. I think everyone was slightly surprised by how early it spun, and I guess that it's not a. I don't think England have picked that team for that pitch, is what I'd say. I don't think they, not like the old times where they've gone in and thought they could, sort of dried up at one end with seamers and have Graham Swan at the other end and that kind of thing. It does appear to have started spinning bigger early than maybe people thought it would. If that's fair from what we've.
Yeah, it is fair. Yeah, it is. But also, Barber plays spin well. I get what the logic of what they're doing is.
Yeah, and after last week as well. I mean, I know you've got to be more flexible than this, but I can see how you would look down what happened last week at Ollie Robinson's performance and James Anderson's performance, and the opportunity to bring back Mark Wood. You almost discount Stokes. Stokes is going to play. He's the captain. He's the all-rounder. He's going to bowl at some point. But you can sort of see why they wouldn't have wanted to break up those two, and also why they would have wanted to get the extra pacing as well.
You absolutely can, and actually, Robinson and Anderson can do the holding role that a spinner might traditionally.
And crucially, of course, England have got 3 spinners in their team. This isn't, although granted not a wrist spinner, which obviously is sort of technically speaking what Abrar Ahmed is, despite the sort of finger action, as it were, rather than the traditional sort of big wrist spin. But anyway, we move on to another team-related question. Neil Varani asks, if England didn't announce the team so early, could they have seen the pitch and adjusted their plans? I guess the answer to that is you can always. That's not an official selection, is it? The 24-hour out one. As we saw in last.
That's a really good point. Whether they would want to tell someone they're playing and then tap them on the shoulder and say, bad luck. They probably wouldn't. But I guess those are the tough decisions you've got to make. I mean, look, the thing I think they got wrong, I don't know if there's a question about this, is I would have played my best keeper. Pope is doing lots of things well, and he obviously took a couple of absolute blinders in the first test. But he missed, I'm going to say he missed 2. He certainly missed Imran ul-Haq early on 11 or so. He went on to get 100 in the first innings. And very near the end, he let one pass in between him and Root, Well, bearing in mind there were something like 9 minutes left of the game when England wrapped it up. Those are two big moments, eh? And if your keeper's going to be standing up a lot to the spinners, and in fact, I think Pope stood up to Anderson briefly in the first test. I think you would have wanted to pick your best keeper, and I think that is Ben Folkes. In terms of I don't want to criticise it really, because I like so much of the confidence of what they're saying. The England camp are saying, this is our team. We're not particularly worried about what anyone else says or does. We believe in this lot. Name it. No need for any sort of mind games or anything. But actually, you've still got to be able to adapt. You've still got to be nimble. And I think that just sometimes a hint of hubris about some of the things that they're doing. This is the whole thing about the first question as well. I don't want to criticise it really, because I get it. And I think they're doing it really well. But just because they're doing it well doesn't mean they couldn't do it a little bit better with just a little bit more nuance.
Well, that is the question that Simon Stokes asked. Is it possible to be aggressive, entertaining, and play smart at the same time?
Well, we know it is possible, yes. Don't we? I mean, Brian Lara's name jumped to my head. But so, of course, it is.
Also, and a lot of what they've done since under Brendan McCullum has been that as well.
Yes.
A lot of the... And to be fair, even today, as much as, some of the reverse sweeps ended up in fielders' hands and stuff, it's all done. There's a method to it, which is that's the way these guys feel most comfortable hitting spin. It's not... They're not doing it to take the... No one's doing it to take the mick.
No, Lord, no. And they're very good at doing it. I mean, I think legitimately people can take issue with Jack Leach doing it first ball. But that's... I
couldn't believe Jimmy didn't do it first ball.
It's one of his go-to shots. It's one of his go-to shots.
It is. I mean, it sounds like you'd say because Jack Leach throws the ball right-handed, he's not... when he reverses, he is quite good at it. He's not some... changing his hands around isn't... See what I mean? It's actually fairly natural for him. And he plays it quite well, as does Jimmy, I guess, for the same reason. Bowls right-handed, bats left-handed, and they all do. Even we're not really doing it in international cricket, haven't we?
About the dismissals of the 10 and 11 when we're talking about the batting display. And the other thing is, we're sitting here hour after play or whatever, being all sort of pompous about what they should have done, what they might have done. You make these decisions.
Oh no, I'm with them. I'm very, very.
Oh, I know you are. I know you are. I'm more talking about me. That sometimes, it's terribly easy to sort of theorise and criticise, and actually, it's been England was so low 6 months ago, and actually they have just won a World Cup. They have just won 7 out of 8. There's a lot to like and encourage, and I really wouldn't want to be too critical. I hope I'm not being, but these questions are all absolutely valid, and the answer to the question we were just asked there is yes. And I'd love England to be just a little bit more sophisticated at times, but that's easier said than done. All I would say on that is, and this was my preview piece, that the England white ball sides were very unsophisticated for a couple of years. They just tried to bash 400, and the messages were go harder, go harder, go harder. Well, actually, they won the 19 World Cup chasing 243 or whatever it was. They won the T20 World Cup chasing 143, something like that. 140. Both middling scores, actually both the sort of scores where Jonathan Trott would have been the ideal middle order, top order player. And they've become a much more sophisticated side, but they still know they've got that punch there. When Frank Bruno won when he won a world title, it was actually largely due to his jab. I think I'm right in saying. Obviously, Bruno will always be known for the fact that he had a hell of a punch, but it was actually the jab that was. I think actually towards the end he went southpaw, didn't he? But anyway, don't forget about that. But I think he did. He was switch hitting effectively in boxing terms. I may have got that wrong, but from memory that was happening. The point being that I think we're very near the start of the evolution of this side, and at the moment the messaging is all very, very simplistic, and that's no doubt right. And it will take a while before, actually the Ben Stokes innings showed, because it was a sensible innings. It was just a good innings, I thought. I mean, didn't get that many, but it was a well-constructed innings. I think his first 6 came after 30 balls or so. And I thought that showed that he gets it, actually. Given any sort of chance, he will go out there swinging. But today he knew that I think they needed to rebuild a wee bit. And he started to do that. It just so happened he got a super googly that went past his outside edge. By the way, that was the moment of the day. I thought his face looking at I don't know, he was looking at the pitch of the bowler afterwards. He just looked in such shock. It was brilliant. But he actually played a more sophisticated innings and it didn't work, which is really interesting, isn't it?
As Ben Duckett said, he bowled good balls. And
he did. Well, he's an interesting bowler. I wonder how long, the mystery side of that will last. I think England have had a real good look at him now. And look, he's a good bowler. I'm not saying, but when Mendes started his career, he looked utterly unplayable. But it actually only lasted a few years, didn't it? It was quite a brief career at the absolute top level. And maybe it'll be similar. We'll see.
Absolutely. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, is that it? Brilliant. Thank you.